Great to be here today. Just fun to see faces in person. So nice. So I'll jump in, but I actually want to start by saying I feel like 1 Million Cups. I've been attending for like 5 years, and I feel like it was very formative to my journey as an entrepreneur. Like just hearing ideas so frequently and being able to like think about things in the way that these presentations and these Q&As force you to do, I think has very much helped my journey. I really attribute that as one thing that helped me to be able to really think through a model and pivot. And actually, this is something I've been pivoting on for over a decade. I was in the nonprofit space for several years, running a portion of what we're doing now, and then have been able to actually hone in on the market opportunity, which we did not do as a nonprofit, and nonprofits typically don't even think about, and they should, but they don't. And so that's just kind of a intro to what I'm doing. So Ethik Collective, the opportunity, and again, this came from working with an artisan group that was a 501c3 nonprofit in Uganda, starting in 2009. So artisan craft, surprisingly, is the second largest employer of people in the developing world, second only to agriculture. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of people that are engaged in handcraft, and anybody that's traveled to, especially a place where there's indigenous peoples, there's typically a craft that's been passed down, and very often this is part of people's livelihood. But we'll talk about the problems. So very highly skilled indigenous craft. But the social problem is that they lack market access. So, and particularly as we've worked with artisans through COVID, when they don't, many of them rely heavily on tourism, and that's been obviously obliterated. And so workshops have been very strained, and especially in societies where they're not getting relief checks at all, it's been a huge struggle. If they do have access, they historically have been sorely underpaid by middlemen who are more extractive and exploitive to their craft, where all the value add goes to the middleman, not to the producer. And they are typically in the cycle of being indebted for their raw materials, and so never able to get ahead. So some of these crafts take days to make, and they're making beautiful craft that can be sold for a good price in another country, and yet they do not profit from that. So the market problem that we've seen is that companies have an internal and external motivation to do good, right? We just see that in the rise of corporate social responsibility, et cetera. But often they do not have the expertise or the resources to do so appropriately. And I would say I've done some consulting with companies and just seen how they might like throw money at things that don't align with their company, or are just throwing money at things that are not sustainable. So our solution is, if we could connect artisan groups to conscious companies, this is where we can really solve both of these issues. And this is where we've arrived at with Ethik, where conscious companies and artisan cooperatives connect. So I really believe that one of our biggest assets is our team. We have a rad team, and we work to remove the complexities and streamline logistics for our partners so that they can focus on creating a beautiful product with these artisan cooperatives. So I'm going to tell you about some of the things that we've done through 2020 that were kind of bonkers. This is the artisan group that I founded in 2009. It was a nonprofit that just struggled for several years. We never really turned a profit. We started with 7 artisans in 2009. That kind of stayed the same for several years. We got up to 20 artisans. But this past year, in the middle of COVID, we had a huge order come in for 160,000 of these handmade ornaments for a holiday promotion for a company. And if you imagine that could be about stacked from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, is about the products that they made. So we had 752 women employed across Rwanda and Uganda, women in villages, and then what we did with the women that were doing the final production, we had 350 of them that were doing the final touches. Our workshop there only holds about 100 women, and especially with COVID wanting to do social distancing, we rented 2 schools because schools were out of session, and then we had 2 shifts a day to be able to pull this off. So those 752 women were supporting over 3,000 dependents. So that's kind of the peripheral impact, and we had 26,050 hours of fair pay work days as a result of this order. And again, for people living in a society that did not have help through COVID, this was keeping food on the table for this many families. Just another one I wanted to touch on in light of recent events, world events. Just before COVID became global, actually, it was the end of February, myself and my now husband, Devin, traveled to Palestine to work with olive wood workers. And so we have been in touch with them. At the end of, by fall, they will have made around 120,000 handmade products for our customers. And again, with what's been happening on the conflict between Israel and Palestine, we've been in touch with them almost daily and hearing pretty heartbreaking stories, but grateful that we could play a little part in keeping them employed as they've been going through such difficulties. So our impact pillars, the things that we focus on is absolutely fair pay, and that really is a formula that is depending on each country, understanding the costs of living, et cetera. And so we do that to ensure that from the top down to the bottom of the group that we're working with, people are being appropriately paid, and sometimes we'll even have third parties go in to ask the artisans in the village to make sure that they were getting, that the money has come to them as agreed upon. Sustainability, we provide items that are very sustainable. We have packaging that's made out of tree bark, and baskets that are woven from sustainably sourced products. Capacity building, we know that if our artisan groups are thriving, that's when we as a company, it's worth it. It's like what our core mission is to see them grow and build capacity. So this past year, we've been able to secure 6 different grants for artisan groups to get machinery, tools that can increase their capacity. And then transparency, we really work to give, so our end customer, these companies that we're developing these products for, tell them the number of people that are working on it, really give them a peek behind the curtain into what's happening with their product, how things are sourced. And so we really work on having that transparency to our customers so that they can understand what's going on. So this is our 2020 impact by numbers. So we had over 1,400 artisans, over 5,000 family members supported through those artisans, 33,900 fair pay work days, and 325,000 handmade products. So this was our first year of business, and it was super lucky. I mean, when COVID hit, we were like, well, we'll have to push pause on this for a while. And actually, it turned out that some of the customer companies we were working with, they wanted to lean into social good and be able to show their customers that they're doing, that they care about the world. And so we were able to do a lot of storytelling for them, and as a result of that, they loved our product and kept buying more. So just to understand where we sit in the market, and this has been a pivot from what we've been doing in the past. So we're really leaning into the wholesale market, and what we're working on right now, and actually I'm presenting today because we're on Tuesday going to launch a new website that is going to be a 2-sided marketplace. And so we've been more of like a curated collection that a company will say, we want this type of product. And we're like, well, these are the companies these are the artisan groups you can work with. These are the products that we have. And we've been working with about 20 artisan groups in different countries. Well, kind of our bigger vision as we've gone on is seeing if we can create a platform that they can access. And given it's going to be different than other two-sided platforms, so we've got speaking of two-sided platforms, so 10,000 Villages, maybe one but for sure Etsy, where people can kind of create their own account, put their own pictures up. Many of our artisan groups do not have the capabilities to have like really nice pictures, or the storytelling component of like how cool the story is behind their product, because it's just normal to them. They're like, well, yeah, we've been doing this forever. Like, it's not that cool, and we're like, it's really cool. And so that's we actually have to do a lot more than a typical two-sided marketplace for that side of the marketplace to get our artisan groups on. But we're pretty unique in the space for artisan crafts. So you can see these top companies. These are different companies that do gifting or just like a marketplace online that you can as an individual customer can go buy one-off items. Well, we're working to connect this marketplace so they can make large wholesale orders, but still have that impact here. So as far as we have been able to see as we scour what is happening in this space, we're the only ones that are actually doing this model with this product. So we're really excited about the capabilities of having potentially hundreds of artisan groups on our website and be able to connect them. So just to wrap up, to kind of get at the heart of what we're doing, this was a group, this was the nonprofit artisan group in Uganda that I've been working with for a long time. And this was when we had just hired a handful of new artisans. And for many of them, it was the first time ever receiving an actual paycheck, because their typical work is like daily pickup work, finding work that day to buy the ingredients for one meal, for the one meal that you're going to feed your kids that night. And so they had worked for 2 weeks and were getting their first actual paycheck. And so we had these envelopes with cash inside for each of their payments. And so I was there for this, and we were handing out the paychecks, the pay envelopes, and they just started cheering, and they were just like hooping and hollering, and they started chanting something in the local language. And I asked one of the artisans to tell me what they were saying, and I think this really gets at the heart of what we are working to do and why our artisans do what they do. They said, "Today our children will drink milk." And so that's what we're working on, and would welcome any questions from you guys now. Come on up, Dev. So yeah, we got married and started a business last year. So that was a crazy thing to do. Yeah, Jim. Oh.
Congratulations, it's fantastic. Great ideas. A few things that, you know how I am, I just see things differently. And I think in the beginning, there's a little disconnect about what you're doing for corporations. Mm-hmm. And I think the wording maybe, and just, because that's a really key component of what you're doing. I think it's a fantastic thing. I think you need to express that more up front, because there was like this little blip, okay, we combine with companies and they need to do good. The problem was not explained big enough to say, I'm going to buy into the problem. Mm-hmm. So if you just make that adjustment, the rest of it did really well. There was one slide that you couldn't read. I took a picture of it. It's the one where you showed the different things, transparency, backwards, etc. Mm-hmm. Very difficult to people to catch because of the color scheme behind it. Mm. Great explanation. It was wonderful, but on a technical thing, we couldn't read it really well because it was too light.
Yeah.
And those are really key components. So that, to amplify that, I think it really helped in what you're doing. The other thing I would suggest is your logo is difficult to read for, in reality. I mean, it's a great thing, but ethics is just hard to read because it's script. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I think there's some great potential, lots of things out there. We need to talk later on. Some of my clients, this is an ideal thing for them. So, but yeah, great work and congratulations.
Thank you so much. No, that's great feedback. I appreciate that. That's a good, especially that like developing out that problem in the beginning. We will work on that. Right.
Melissa, great job. I think it's been so fun to watch your journey over the last several years and just how you've evolved and figured out your spot in the market. And I know you know this valley well, and many know you well. Have you worked with like the Sorensen Impact? They just had a conference they just put on the last couple of days. This is their spot where they really invest in these social good companies, and you are right there in what they're looking for. Have you worked with them, or
we haven't, and we need to?
Okay.
And we just did like we've met up with some traditional VCs, and like, yeah, this is what we're doing, and we're like, oh, you're not as excited about this, are you? Like finding that like we don't have the growth potential of a tech startup, but those that care about impact, we can really find that. Cool.
Yeah. We know some folks there, right?
Yeah.
Have you guys had many issues with the supply chain being all messed up during COVID? Like, how have you guys dealt with that?
Poorly and frantically is how we've developed, or how we've worked with it. Yeah. All the obvious stuff with COVID, and then there's an order of magnitude added with complexity of the Israeli-Palestine situation right now. Things that should work just kind of don't work, and they need a lot of person-to-person interaction to make these shipments come through. I mean, we were at the Salt Lake airport last week just making sure some stuff got through customs from Palestine, and it got flagged like for a lot of these issues. But not impossible to deal with. Like our shipping costs were like most folks last year were a lot higher. A lot of the logistics pieces, thank heavens for our artisan partners, were managed at a country level incredibly well. So like the Uganda group that she mentioned, they switched to shift work. Like they had a bus that picked the women up so they never broke COVID restrictions. For the stuff in Nepal and India, we were able to find local photographers that could go in and document the women there without breaking travel restrictions. So fingers crossed, 2021 will have less of a headwind on that matter. But we've also, as a precautionary measure, adjusted some of our pricing to not include logistics. And so we'll still manage the logistics, but we're not on the hook for, a bill which in 2020 could end up being, 5 to 10x what we forecasted. Great.
I just want to give just a really specific example, just so you know how wild it was. So that order of 160,000 ornaments, we had put the pricing of shipping into the pricing, the upfront price for our customer, and we had estimated about 20 cents per item. And then with COVID pricing, it went up to about $1. And times that by 160,000. So we were like, okay, we're about $130,000 over budget. And we actually talked to our customer and they split the bill with us, which is like pretty incredible. So we have a high level of trust with them, and they really care about our artisans. And we were just like, there's nothing that we can do. And they're like, okay, let's do it. So those are the things we were hit with these bills that we were like, whoa, we had no idea that would happen. So yeah.
Okay, just another couple of questions. I think you're familiar with Kylie Trisha Chen, who does a lot of artisan support and partnerships. Maybe, I don't know, there's a partnership there that could be, collaboration there. I think that you guys would be phenomenal together to do. And what about Yuta Bands? Have you heard of Yuta Bands out of Africa, Zimbabwe? Another good partnership. Really great, the do good, helping those industries, those villages really find employment and a job and a way to get their product out, because they don't have the resources, like you said, to take good pictures or to create websites or to get the publishing out and get marketing done. Another two good partners to maybe reach out to.
Yeah, I have not heard of Unibands. I'll check that out.
So in Mexico, there's a company called Tonas Woods, which is a watch company, which kind of started doing the same thing you guys are doing. That went to these native areas, you know what I mean, poor areas, and they started making these watches that had a design about their culture. And when you bought a watch, it had like a little story about what that design or that symbol meant, and you know what I mean. And so you're buying the culture, but not the watch. I was looking at your guys' website. Do you guys think of doing something like that with your artisans in Africa? Like have a design about their culture, a symbol of their cultures in the product, and in that way, when a consumer buys it, they know what that symbol means, or have a little story about that symbol.
Interesting idea. We haven't done. I mean, we do have yeah. So we do have typically a card that we develop with the customer. So that's like one of our value adds that we like. We'll create a card with the artisan photo, and it might be about like the indigenous story of how this is traditionally made, and about the impact. What we typically do, actually, and this is something that we probably should build out in this as well, and that we're working to build out on our website. We don't really tell this yet, but so this website will be different in next week. It'll be better, but. We typically are doing a lot of branding for the company. So in some way, we're like a high-end swag company, because like with Palestine, we did olive wood cutting boards for a company. They just ordered 20,000 for an event, and with their company's logo engraved into the board. So we do, like, we don't put our name on any of the stuff, and we typically don't put the artisan group's name necessarily. It's all branded for the company, but then with the like deep story. So, yeah, but that's an interesting. What's the name of that?
It's called Tonas Woods.
Oh, cool.
It's watches made out of woods. So.
Oh, nice. Let's look that up. Right on.
I'm just kind of wondering, big picture, do you guys see yourselves as more of like focusing in the middle, like an African artisan Alibaba, or do you want to go more downstream and help develop these artisan communities?
Great question. I think the next 6 months will kind of be an early indicator on what we get traction on. Like there's two working hypotheses here. Like if we can work a self-serve channel where we can get artisans who we've either reached out to based on like a fair trade certification, if we can get them onboarded onto the platform, we'll be working with like larger collectives. But then, like Melissa mentioned in the capacity building side, there are regions where they just don't have any marketing material, but they have beautiful handcraft, and we want to support the development of that. And so I think for the next year or so, we're going to be mostly working with established artisans, but developing a pipeline for earlier, younger groups that might not have all the certifications, that might not, have the money to just go through some of these compliance measures. To build them up and start getting orders for them. The tricky thing with the marketplace is we really want to get a high level of adoption. So if we onboard an artisan group, we want to make sure that we can get orders for them relatively early on, just to keep the engagement. And so that's something we juggle too.
Hi. Thank you so much for presenting. I really love what you're doing, and I think it's really impactful, and that's some of the things that like I know Sorensen Capital looks for. I was just wondering, in terms of stickiness, what have you seen, and what are your plans in the future to improve the stickiness of these companies that, order, large amounts from different groups?
I'll answer one part of this, and I bet you'll have some more answers. So I think like a huge value, and we have one like flagship client that's like totally kept us in business this year, and they have made repeated orders and have kind of made this like built this into their business. And we give them for each order, so I kind of mentioned this, but how many artisans employed, how many dependents were supported, how many fair pay work hours, and then we're giving them content for blog posts and for social media posts, and we're giving them like quite a bit of content. And like Devin mentioned, whereas we can't travel there ourselves, we've been finding like really high-end photographers in country. So we're giving them so much content and making them the hero. Like we really are making these companies look so good, and they'll tell us like, I mean, we had a company that did a holiday promotion, and like 20,000 products were sold out within a few hours. And we think we broke their website. Their website did break on that promotion, and we're the factor that's different, but also COVID was different. Anyways, so many things. But we were like, we broke their website. Maybe we contributed, but giving them that kind of content, like they're making money on us. They make a bigger margin than we do, but they have a huge engaged audience, and so that's valuable. But yeah, they're making money and they're looking awesome. So like we can tell them, you don't have to donate anything, but you're getting all of the like social feel goods from your customers and your employees from doing this, and you're making money. So we've been able to like kind of hit that spot. That's, I think, pretty helpful.
I can, and I would just add something on that. Like, so my background, I've never been in social impact before. I've worked in enterprise software for most of my career, and that's kind of the model that we're looking for, where it is essentially subscription revenue, where if we can get in, make an impact, and instead of giving someone software as a service, we're giving them CSR or story as a service, then each year we work with them, we kind of build our moat with those individual clients. But it is risky. I think the opposite, though, if we were to just be a B2C startup, and we would be heavily reliant on staying on top of trend ourselves, or on Facebook, Instagram, influencer ads, that's a competitive war that we don't really want to fight. Like, it's something that would require us to raise a lot more capital. We might make a higher margin per product, but the long-term stickiness of the revenue would be much more difficult to maintain. And so it was a conscious decision for us to go to B2B, but it does have its associated risks.
Yeah. Camden, Lahargue, it's good to meet you guys. You guys did a great job. I can't help but want to connect. I own a humanitarian company myself, and then I also run a digital marketing agency. And so I don't know necessarily where we could go, but I just feel connected, and I feel like we should talk. So, I don't even know where it could go, but typically what I do is I bring volunteers into country, and we do projects that create sustainable change and real growth for that community. So when we leave, they know how to fish, right? That kind of thing. So I feel like there's a kind of a covalent bond somehow in there with what you're doing that's sustainable, and how my helpers and volunteers could help establish a foundation maybe to make the artisans function. I don't know. Like I said, brainstorming, we could connect and maybe grab lunch or something, but I'd love to talk to you guys.
Right on.
So.
Hey, thanks so much for being here today. I always love the work you do, Melissa, and glad that you're involved now, Devin. So you talk about these companies who will do good and get involved in ways that they think are helpful but are actually causing more harm than good. I'm curious what the story is, or how you communicate to them how what you're doing and the good that you are helping provide to these communities is different than what they're currently involved in. And what's that transformation look like for them?
So luckily, I did a lot of unsustainable development in the developing world for several years. That I did, like I was a group leader for kind of a humanitarian trips that didn't have a lot of infrastructure. We kind of like go hog wild and like, I think you need this. I think you need this. And actually, the community that we started the artisan group in Uganda, I was originally there doing like more general projects, and came back 2 years later and saw like no change, like no trace of what we did for 4 months. And so our impact hypothesis is that when people have fair pay and consistent work, they thrive. Like, this is what, from all the things that I've done that have not worked, this we're actually seeing people be able to like actually break barriers of generational poverty. And we actually did an impact study with led by a BYU professor, now UT, yes, and yeah. But it was a third-party evaluation in Uganda with 700 women. It was a randomized control trial. And we're actually able to, we just got this data back. So we're mulling through it and figuring out how to message this. But when people have consistent work, they're able to invest in livestock. They're able to feed their children more, like from 1.8 meals to 2.5 meals a day on average. And seeing like actual impact, which is pretty tough to get to in the developing world, actually. And so we just really believe in giving people jobs.
To that point, that's a great question, because I think anytime you work in impact work, your baseline is we'd be better off if we just airdropped money into this region. And like in a past life, long time ago, I worked as a development economist, and so we are really trying to be cognizant of these issues without boring people to death about the details. But like Melissa mentioned, like with the professors at Emory and the professors at UT, like doing these randomized controlled trials to make sure that there actually is an impact. And the second order piece from that impact is not just like, did women make money in these regions, but are they actually accruing wealth? And that's like what we want to look at for like the next generation. It's like are we helping households become more stable? Are we giving more predictable income to a region? Is there resulting infrastructure that comes in after that? And that'll be an ongoing process, but the early indicators are pretty good.
So you mentioned getting like machinery for these artisans. Do you think that would make the product lose value, or like just the story of the product with them? Like, yes, they're able to pump more product out, but it's not like handmade, or like just lose story.
Oh, good question. It's actually more like tools. So, for example, like we got a kiln for the group. So we secured a grant for the kiln just before they had that 160,000 order. And otherwise, they would have been like, in the past, they'd have to go an hour away to fire their products. So we did that with we have basket weavers in Rwanda that we set up a custom dye lab so they could do custom colors. But they're still weaving them in villages, but they can do like cool colors, and they can do like match Pantone colors for companies. So again, it's something that helps their capacity to be able to really connect with our market better. And something just to say, we have absolutely we have a policy of like no exclusivity with our artisans. We're like, go find other customers. And we, on our website that we're building out right now, their name will be listed on there, like the artisan group's name. And some of them have websites that are usually those that have some kind of US or European connection and some of them have nice websites, still don't have consistent work. And so we're still filling a gap for them. But we're like, if you go around us, it's fine. Like, we know our value so well, like of doing all these in logistics that, and sometimes we're like, why is nobody else doing this? And we're like, oh, because it's hard. It's really hard to manage these huge handmade orders and all of the details that go into that. And so we know our value. So we're like, if you don't need this value, go and try it. No, just kidding. But like, you can go directly to them. And our artisan groups, you are not exclusively with us. We're building your capacity so you can do more.
I have lots more questions. One of the things I didn't see that I would like to see would be your international impact with other international companies. I mean, I'm doing a lot of work right now with a bunch of companies overseas, and they are really about helping. Czech Republic, Norway, Japan, which really shocked me to death. But you didn't mention the international aspects of this. I mean, America has got some disconnect with everyone just because there are so many trials here, but success-wise, you have other clients that I didn't hear you talk about. All of Europe, some of Asia, who want other ethnicities, products there they can represent. And that might be something to consider. I think you're global anyway, and logistically it's easier to ship to some of those countries than it is to ship here, especially from Africa to ship to most of Europe. It's a lot easier than shipping to the U.S.
Yeah. What we've done globally is we work with a multinational company that then they referred us to their other markets. So we were selling directly to their other markets, but we've only worked with U.S. companies really. But no, you're right. It's something we haven't expanded to yet, but that's definitely something that we'll have to build out that capability. But the customs, man, it gets tricky with other companies.
And the nice thing is some countries don't have 10% of what we have for customs comparatively, and so it's a lot easier to ship. I'm just saying, it might be, and then when they ship to here, it's even easier because they have a better track record. So it's going from it's a double shipment, but sometimes it's easier to get into this country.
Great point. Thank you.
Okay, I truly believe that you can make a change one person at a time, right? And what you guys are totally doing that with what you're working on. With the numbers here, we could double your followers on Instagram. So I challenge everybody to open up their Instagram accounts to go follow these guys right now.
That's my ask.
There you go.
Yeah, you just preempted my ask. That's what we just started our Instagram last week. We have basically no followers. You're one. I'm one too. I've liked all the photos. So yeah, if you could pull out your phone and on Instagram, Ethik Collective, and like all of our photos, and we'd love just any engagement if you think things are interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, guys. You did an awesome job. Our last question, well, I guess we already kind of answered it. Go ahead and it's Ethik Collective on Instagram. And then we want to present you guys with some 1MC cups. We've got another one back here.
All right.
Good burnt orange.
Oh, yeah.
Devin. And let's give it up for these guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was so fun.